Hello.
Day 62.
Yes, day 62.
So, I am going to read this Bible verse about fear. And it's going to be where we start from for day 62. So, Psalms 112, 5 through 10 says, "Good comes to those who lend money generously and conduct their business fairly. Such people will not be overcome by evil. Those who are righteous will be long remembered. They do not fear bad news. They confidently trust the Lord to care for them. They are confident and fearless. They can face their foes triumphantly. They share freely, give generously, and give generously to those in need. Their good deeds will be remembered forever. They will have influence and honor. The wicked will see this and be infuriated. They will grind their teeth in anger. They will slink away, their hopes thwarted." So that's a pretty good thing. I feel like we conduct our business fairly, like our family and like most of our friends, we feel like conduct their business fairly, lend freely, give generously, and we don't fear bad news, which is a difficult thing because you have to choose to not be fearful. I mean, apprehensive, prepared, but not fearful. And that's really hard in international adoption because the stakes are high. And you really have a lot to lose here. So we're just watching the days tick by. We have been, it feels like longer, but we landed in Liberia February 13th. So 2.5 weeks we've been here. And it feels like a longer amount of time. It feels like we've gotten comfortable here, gotten to know people. We feel accepted in Liberia, like Liberians in general seem very nice to us. But like 2.5 weeks, and that's good because we had planned initially to just be here for 3 weeks, visit our kids, meet them, and go back home. But that's a difficult thing to do once you actually meet them, because once you meet them, you're kind of like, we can't leave you here.
And it feels very close to actually the process starting.
Yeah, like it feels like we hear things every day. And we hear negative things every day. Just like I talked about in yesterday's video, it's like, I'm tired of the naysayers. I'm tired of the people that they always have something negative to say. And I'm sad. So I wanted to explain this a little bit better. Okay, so I had this explained to me much better. And I feel like I've been fairly familiar with the Liberia process for several years. And I felt like I was fairly familiar with international adoption, but turns out there's this part I didn't understand. And now I understand it better. So thank you to my friend Victoria and fellow adoptive mom who broke this down for me. I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. So when you apply to adopt from Liberia, the Ministry of Gender and Children and Families, that department does investigative reports after you've been matched by your agency. And then they give the official nod for your matching. So technically, until they give that official nod and send that report, you're not necessarily officially matched from Liberia's sample. Because they're not going to match a kid that they don't think qualifies for adoption by Liberian law, which means you have to be an orphan. Which means you have to have at least one parent that is deceased or absent or has abandoned you, and the other one cannot be able to care for you for certain reasons, and there has to be good ones. So once you adopt through Liberian law, then you apply for what's called a I-6404, which is an orphan status document. So basically you're applying to the U.S. government to immigrate your adopted child because you rescued them from the state of being an orphan. I call it orphanism. But the state of being an orphan. So they were orphan status, adopted by you. Now they can be immigrated to the U.S. And once they're standing on U.S. soil, they qualify to apply for U.S. citizenship. So they're not U.S. citizens just because we adopted them. Once we get to the U.S., we have to apply for that citizenship. So this I-6404 is basically approval by the U.S. Embassy here that when they get here, that first of all, that they're allowed to come. And when they get here, they can then apply to be U.S. citizens. But they also have a permanent adoption visa. So like they can't get kicked out of the country if we don't apply for their adoption, for their U.S. citizenship. So you can immigrate by ways of adoption. So when you apply for that, with the U.S. Embassy. There's been times in this program that it's been like a same day thing, even where you have an appointment in the morning, get an email in the afternoon. They ask for medical reports, they ask for paperwork, all this stuff, adoption decree, but it's like easy. Now you meet with the embassy and you have an unknown timeline with no accountability. But what they can do is they can look at your case and read the whole file and read everything. You assume they read it, and decide that they cannot determine whether or not your child is an orphan or was an orphan before you adopted them. So they can't determine orphan status. So sometimes they just need more evidence on that. But they will they will transfer the case to USCIS, which is the United States Central Immigration Service. USCIS, you'll hear us call it USCIS, but USCIS. That's who did our federal fingerprinting. That's who gave us permission to come here to begin with, is USCIS. It's a big thing in international adoption. So if your case is not approvable by the embassy at that time, they will kick it to USCIS for review. Now, if USCIS looks at it and sees that they don't think this child is going to be adoptable, they will issue what's called a NOID, or a notice of intent to deny. And this is like nobody really knows what NOID is really bad, because that means that they're just like, you have to prove that this child is an orphan, you have to give us evidence, and they can take 13 months to 5 years to determine this. And then if they rule that the child is not defined as an orphan by U.S. law or Liberian law, then you cannot immigrate that child. So your status as their parent in Liberia doesn't change. You've still adopted them, you're still responsible for them by Liberian law. But the U.S. government says you cannot immigrate. So in that instance, some families will go back to court and try to unadopt the kid because they'll never be able to immigrate them to live to their country where they live. Many families are in lawsuit, and it's not just Liberia that this happens, but it's become something that we're fearful. It's normal to have a fear that USCIS will be involved. So notice of intent to deny typically happens when something's uncovered that wasn't there before, or information wasn't readily available. It can be like there's a missing timeline, like for 2 years, where was the kid? Nobody really knows. There's just a lot of things that can happen. The embassy, sometimes they won't get USCIS involved at all, and they'll just ask for a DNA test or ask for supporting documentation and
more evidence.
Yeah, but it's kind of a slap in the face of the Liberian government, and it makes our relationship in the adoption community with Liberia stressed, vexed.
Yep.
Because, so a notice of intent to deny is something USCIS can do, but just because your case gets sent to USCIS for review doesn't mean that you're going to get annoyed or a notice of intent to deny. I had thought that if you went to USCIS, that's because they gave a notice of intent to deny and you had to start that clock. So but that's not the case. So your case can get sent to USCIS for review, but then the embassy can actually come back and say, oh, don't worry about reviewing that case. We got it. We approved them.
Yeah.
The U.S. Embassy themselves, I don't think can do annoyed.
They're not supposed to be able to, but if you do get annoyed, you have to pay an attorney, I think, to challenge that, and that costs like $5,500.
$5,500 per rebuttal. So if you get a notice of intent to deny, you have 33 days to present all evidence. So some families, when they get sent to USCIS for a review, will immediately hire an international lawyer. And we have a phone number for one ourselves, in case that happens. And so you get an international adoption lawyer. But sometimes what can happen is you can push there have been cases where senators and Congress and all of that push, and the kids get approved in the limbo time before the notice of intent to deny. So I hope I explained that well.
You did. It's convoluted.
So
not from your explanation.
You decide to adopt. You go through the application process with your agency. Your agency has an orphanage that they work with or sponsor, or in our case, own and run. They match you with kids that they think are appropriate for your family. You keep your paperwork up to date, which it's supposed to be 6 months, 7 to 10 months max, that the Ministry of Gender reviews. So that case then goes to the Ministry of Gender for review. They have your paperwork, they have the kids' paperwork, they look at everything, they decide, oh, okay, this looks good. Then you get that signed off on. Then you go to court for Liberia, and they complete your adoption decree. The parents are there. The judge talks directly to the parents. The judge speaks all 15 tribal languages found in Liberia. And the judge makes sure that the parents understand. It's a very compassionate environment for the birth parents and for the adoptive parents. and you get to kiss the Bible. And sometimes there's lipstick on it from the previous person kissing the Bible.
Nice.
But you're basically swearing that you're going to care for these children as your own, because that's who they become, as your kids. The children are allowed to live with you after that. So once you go to court, a couple days before court and definitely after court, the children are yours to raise. They don't have to go back to the orphanage, but they can only immigrate to the U.S. if the U.S. Embassy approves them. So the U.S. Embassy has been known in the last 6 months to approve one family in 18 hours. And another family, they took 5.5 months. And the one that sat for 5.5 months didn't even go to USIS review. They just approved him eventually. And there may be things happening in the background, but they are bound by law to share those things with the adoptive families, and they're not. So they have lawsuits pending, I'm sure. I know of at least one lawsuit against USIS and the U.S. Embassy for their behavior.
Yeah.
The other thing is that we saw a family go through yesterday. We know of a family, a Florida family through a different agency that went through a month ago. And we know of another Florida family that went through 2 months ago. So, and it's very hit or miss. Like, you don't know for sure who's going to be what. So that's kind of the, so I hope I explained the USIS and the notice of intent to deny better. So, okay, so funny story. So we're going to talk about our walkabout today. God bless Nelson. So
Yes.
Nelson is our friend who, if you're coming to Liberia, especially if you have a large family, Nelson is an orphanage director. He's in taking college classes for basically elementary education degree. He plans to open a school in conjunction with his orphanage to just make a safer place for kids to grow up and find their education in a community they can thrive in. But Nelson has a Nissan Armada that he has access to, and he can drive us around, and our kids are comfortably riding in this Nissan Armada. And his name is Savior because he says so he wasn't sure he would have Savior today, so he was going to borrow a friend's car to come get us because Savior had another mission to do today. But then that fell through, so we ended up riding in Savior. So Nelson calls us right about 15 minutes before he's supposed to be here, and he's talking about the traffic. So do you want to explain Mary Bro Day and the traffic?
Yeah, so today is Mary Bro Day, which is the first Saturday of the month. And I got some communication from Sam Bruce today that was happening. And the funny thing is, we met her, Mary Bro, when we went to the Liberian Electric Company.
So crazy.
I'm like, what a small world.
And like, and you can Google her, and she has this long thing on Wikipedia of her government leadership. She was the mayor for a while.
And now we're celebrating her holiday, which is pretty interesting. So what they do on the first Saturday of the month is they clean the streets. Businesses are open late, so like maybe after 10 o'clock because
8 a.m. to 10 a.m. They can't.
Everybody's cleaning.
They can't sell. It's law. If she put it into law.
I'm down with some Mary Bro. We need to call her and be like, hey, will you help us here? But
she was so passionate too about adoption and getting stuff
done. She was, and she spent a lot of time in the States, so she's very familiar with America. We talked a lot about that, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I told Nelson today that there's parts of America that's corrupt, and he seemed very surprised.
He was.
I was like, dude, humanity is humanity.
If there's government, there's corruption.
Let's look at the child welfare system, specifically in Florida, which that's my message.
So today on our walkabout.
So yeah, so there's so much traffic because of Mary Bro Day, probably.
Like
just
literally bumper to bumper, just sitting.
He's like, so he texts Jeremy, and Jeremy's like, hey, Nelson asked if you know where the town bakery is. And I'm like, well, yeah, we pass it every time we leave here. It's about a mile away, half a mile to a mile away. And I mean, I can't see it from our door. And he's like, Nelson wants to know if we want to meet him there. And I'm like, does he mean for us to leave by ourselves and just go out on foot and cross like probably 7 lanes of traffic without lines that are just bumper to bumper and whizzing by, and motorcycles and KKs and everything else? I'm like, 3
little children.
I didn't ask all that stuff, and I'm just, factoring that in. And like, our 10-year-old is of African descent, and she looks like she's 13 or 14. Like, her body looks like she's 13 or 14. She is 10. And I think Jeremy's going to come to blows with somebody. So she's like 5'4.5", almost 5'5". She's now in a size 9 women's shoe. Thank you, Michelle Davenport, for bringing flip-flops for her that fit. Because I was like, she packed boat shoes, like sandals that don't fit. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me your shoes didn't fit? 9, women's 9. We wear the same size shoe now. But my shoes, she couldn't. Like, I could give her, like, my backup pair of, like, leather noonday sandals, but she can't, like, run in them. So, anyways, she can run in these purple flip-flops. Your tennis shoes, I guess, are okay because she stretched them out. Maybe they're okay. I don't know. I feel like a bad
So
mom.
I told Nelson, I said, listen,
So
I will be more comfortable if you come and get us. Like,
poor Nelson's going to walk
that.
a mile and a half today.
I'm going to need that kind of support.
Yeah.
So he did. And then we did the same.
So he did mean for us to walk alone.
Well, he asked if we were comfortable with that. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be honest with you, bro. I'm not.
No, we're not there yet.
I'm not there yet.
But then
if it was just me, maybe.
Well, and Jeremy this morning was like, my stomach's a little upset. I'm not so sure about that cheeseburger last night. I think I'm going to skip the eggs, And they messed up. So we didn't have buffet breakfast this morning. And they made, the girls wanted 2 cheese omelets, but they made them with veggies. And I wanted a veggie and cheese omelet because they are fantastic. So I was really the only one that got my full breakfast. So it's like, maybe I should eat another steak. But it's...
So Nelson did come and get us.
And we walked. It was about 3/4 of a mile.
We walked the same track we did last time, except we made a
left.
left.
Yeah, and we crossed the traffic.
And
that was fun.
Man.
Nathan. Nelson waited to like negotiate with each person before we walked, and he did when somebody didn't let us through. Like one of these cars. He's like, "This is like."
Yeah.
They might as well be giving you the middle finger, but not maybe that harsh.
I haven't seen a lot of middle fingers. It happens, but I haven't seen it.
This is what they do. So, anyways, we crossed. Well, I was holding middle and little's hand, and Jeremy was walking with our oldest that's of African descent, that all these men are, like, looking her up and down. And I'm like, she's freaking, like,
Dude,
she's 10.
She's a kid.
She's 10. And she's, like, completely unaware that she's being objectified in any way. But, I mean, she looks like 13, 14. So, but we walked in traffic and we did fine. We got to the bakery and I bought cookies for the kid. There's like cornbread based cookies. They weren't as sweet as I thought they would be, but I still bought them and it was still worth it. Totally fine because it was a treat for them. And then the girls, my other 3 girls decided they wanted ice cream. Well, they wanted these specific flavors. So Jeremy paid for them to have 3 small ice creams, but you can't get a small, like whatever they wanted, they ended up having to order a bigger scoop because, I don't know. So we had to upgrade. So Nelson ended up paying the difference, I think. But Jeremy, I think, made it right with him when we got out of the car, gave us some extra cash.
I just feel like a lost dog in high weeds half the time. It's like, to get ice cream,
lost dog in high weeds.
Yeah, so to get ice cream, you have to go to this other register, pay them, get the receipt, and take it back to the ice cream place. And
they tasted I'm pretty sure that our middle child and our youngest child, like our oldest, she tasted what she wanted and then she ordered it and she ate all of it. But I'm looking at this mountain of ice cream that all 3 of my kids get, and I know for sure that the other 2 are not going to eat all of theirs. They're going to eat like half.
If that.
But like it was, the smaller ice cream cups that were available were like a predetermined flavor mix. You couldn't like pick it out or taste it, so they were a little nervous. It was probably the exact same ice cream, but I was just like, I don't even care. So they sat down and ate their ice cream because we were going to take it to go so we could go to the orphanage. But then I'm like, they're not going to eat it all, and we're just going to have like melting ice cream that they're holding in poor old Nissan Armada Savior, and it's just going to be gross, and I just can't handle gross. And we're going to be like looking for a trash bag, and then we'll get to the orphanage with ice cream everywhere, and we didn't bring ice cream for everyone. So it was the whole thing. So I just said, sit down and eat your ice cream. Mm-hmm. And then Nelson got this donut thing that was so good. And it wasn't too sweet, I didn't think, but it was good. And I saw this huge... So they had taken like a can of Crisco and like an totally empty can of Crisco, and they used it to keep the straws in for like drinks, I guess. And I was like, I bet you they go through a case of that, like Crisco, just old school Crisco.
Easily.
So I don't know, it was good.
That's why it tasted so good.
Yeah, and our kids went to the orphanage today too, and they had a blast playing with the other kids. I still like the oldest boy there, I'm just like, I can't even, it's going to be hard for me to leave him there. I'm like thinking in my head, I was like thinking in my head today, like maybe we can make it work. I know we can't, like I know we don't, it's not realistic for us to have a kid of that age. Like it's just, we don't have like the space. It wouldn't, like the dynamics of it would be hard. We already have 2 kids we don't even know yet that we're trying to bond with. And it would completely like throw off the balance of power. in our house because he's more of like, he's a very calm alpha type leader. Like I was watching him play today with the other kids and I'm like, he could, like they were playing a legitimate game for like this, they were fighting over, well they weren't fighting, but they were playing like capture the flag with rocks basically. So there were 2 teams and 2 of my kids were on one team and 1 kid was on the other team. And the older Liberian orphan, he was on my youngest child's team. So it was kind of like fairly even with like the knowledge of the game and the strength. But I watched, so he's trying to just push through like almost like a football push. And he's so gentle about it. And you can see like his guns. He's a little bit shorter than our oldest kid, but you can just see like his ability, like his hands are bigger than mine. Mm-hmm. And so he's like patiently like doing this like push where they're both pushing him almost like you would push a football dolly thing. You know, those, what are they called? Sleds?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like pushing, but like he's doing this with a lot of kids and he's just so gentle with them. Like they start to fall and he kind of just lowers them. You know, he's not mean and he didn't do any like, I'm the king of the world. Like he wasn't really celebrating. He just kept playing, you know, he just kept playing, but he was gentle. And the little kids would come up and he would kind of pretend like one of the little girls was pushing him, like trying to push him back so he couldn't steal the rocks. And he was kind of letting her, like she was winning for a second, and then he'd push back on her. I mean, he was literally like right in front of me the whole day. And I kept watching him do this. And I was just watching this like in kid world, like this gentle giant of a child that's like confident in himself and just like he can't stay there. And you know, the backup plan for what to do with him if he doesn't find a family, I mean there's always one in place, but it's not the same. Like somebody needs to adopt this kid. He's like, and whoever you are, I will probably stalk you to be your friend to just know how he's gonna do, because it just, I watch him and he was born the same year of our oldest children, and 2013 was kind of like a whirlwind for us to have 2 kids in the same year, but that's the year he was born. And so anyways, we're just watching them play. But it was good to see all of them play because like they've made friends with these kids that they were scared of at first. Like they're all these unknowns. They're worried that their new sisters would not like them or they wouldn't be able to talk to them, all this stuff. And like 2 days in a row, none of our kids, like eventually our Liberian daughters like gravitated back to us and they were coloring and they were talking to us, you know. But most of the time they played with the new siblings, so it's good to see them.
It was a good flow today because a lot of the younger kids were taking a nap and chilling, so it was very few around us.
Yeah. And I think when you look at kids, so sometimes when you adopt kids, especially older kids into your home, you wonder, are they going to get along with my other kids? And there are things to consider there. Are they going to fit well? Are they going to be crazy? Are they going to slit my throat in my sleep kind of thing? Like there's all these worries with older kids that are kind of unfounded. So kids in Liberia don't go through like lack of attachment. Like someone holds them, someone nurses them, someone's their friend. This is a poverty suffering country for sure, but they are very village minded. So someone's holding a kid. It may not be your kid, but somebody's with them. So they don't have those issues of being stuck in a crib in rows of orphanages where no one talks to them, plays with them, looks at them, touches them. That's not what happens to these kids. Most Liberian kids stay with their birth family or someone in their community till they're about 3. And then that's when nutrition and all of that changes. But no, they don't have that. The ability to attach is intact for these kids. The ability to bond is intact. And I think sometimes when I was watching them play, I think about how much we've changed our American kids. And our American kids, like some of them are adopted, some of them are biological, but they're American born and we've had them all since their birth. So, but the things that they are learning as American children about orphans is going to stay with them. You know, like these are just kids. So like the fears and the things like, oh, could I do this or could I do that? When my children are adults, not only are they going to be comfortable with the adoption world should they choose that, but they're going to speak with their peers about it at a place of expertise.
Yep.
Like,
well, and they're soaking in this 40-minute drive every 3 times a week, coming and going. They're seeing these things that's all around us as we drive there. I mean, they're seeing so many things, stuff I've not seen really.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I think, yeah.
How fortunate we are.
If you're on the fence about adoption, or you're on the fence, or you know someone that's on the fence, or you're like, or you know someone that's already in the adoption world, and you're like, I don't know how to support them, like, give them money. That's what they need. Tell them, congratulations, here's $500, because that's what they're going to need. But I think it would be interesting for someone to talk to, specifically my middle child, because she's just more open and articulate about things and honest. What does she really think about international adoption, and should you do it? So if you're an adult and you want to talk to my middle child, I can set that up. Because she's not going to be the emotional type that's like, well, of course you should. Oh, you should take the first one available. Like, she's not going to do that. She's going to want to, like, she commented on how the little girl that does get to go, she's met her parents, and she's met the little girl separately. Because she met the little girl at the orphanage. She met the parents here. You know, they came for dinner the night before they went to pick her up. And she's like, Mom, I can see where that little girl will fit with those parents. Like, I can see where that would be a good fit. Kind of like she's always been there. And, like, that matters. There are at least 3 kids in that orphanage that I'm like, whoever gets them, they're going to need to be calm. They're going to need to have their own therapy. Not because they're bad kids, and not because they can't attach or anything like that, but because they're just firecrackers. And I'm not even talking about Rejoice. Rejoice is getting adopted by
They're going to need a lot of Benadryl.
She's not a firecracker near, like, there's a couple of them that I'm like, there was this boy and girl that kept fighting over this one toy, and I kind of let them self-resolve until one of them picked up, like, this toy. It's like a train track, but it's like a wooden train track, and she turned it into like a beating stick, and I was like, well, I think I'm gonna have to intervene, you know, because the nannies, I think they do watch them pretty closely, but when we're there, they kind of give us our space, you know. But one of my kids did fall and one of them got his tiny little, like, paper cut, and the nanny was very attentive and put a Band-Aid on it. I was like, you're okay, come sit down, take a breath. But one of them fell, and she was crying, and all we heard just crying. It was like right around the corner of the build, like they're playing outside, so it's right around the corner where we couldn't really see her. I think she just collided with another kid. There was no blood. She really didn't have any injuries, but she was crying, like, loud. And so I went over there, and I realized it was her, and she let me pick her up and everything. And then ultimately one of the nannies walked over and was like, what happened? And she was like crying, kind of like breathing fast. And she was telling her, and she's like, well, just come sit down and rest, you know. So she like let me help her, and then she let the nanny that she's used to help her. And then she went and sat down, and then she got her hair done. They fixed her hair for her. So it was kind of one of those things, but I'm glad that the nannies are attentive of them, and I'm glad that my youngest Liberian daughter can get a Band-Aid for a paper cut. I mean, it was this tiny little, like, I don't even know if it really happened right then. It was just sort of like this tiny little scratch. But, I mean, that's what I do, you know.
Yeah.
Band-Aids for everybody. I don't know, this video went long, too.
Band-Aids all around.
I feel like I'm just, like, in this state of urgency for these other kids to find families, and I don't want to speak specifically about them, I don't know their cases. I've not seen their case files. I don't know their histories. I know there's a couple there that are not truly, like, their paperwork never was finished by their birth family, so they're kind of not available for adoption, but I don't know all of them. There's a few that I've asked, do they have a family match with them yet? And I've heard no, and I'm like, we gotta hurry. But maybe we don't have to hurry. I mean, maybe people aren't as scared of older kids as they can. But when you watch a kid that's a 10-year-old boy that fits into a setting of utter chaos, and I think there's more girls than boys.
Yeah. And
just the madness, the, like, Lord of the Flies that is a group of 30 kids, ages, like, 10 and down? Like, 35 kids. Because there are older teenagers that are still a part of that program, but they're not there. They don't live there. They live with a family member, so they can go to high school. But, like, just watch that patience with him, you know. I find it impressive. I've met a lot of 10-year-old little boys. They're not all that cool. And then some of the younger ones today, we got a little break from, like, the younger kids because they were all kind of taking a nap.
Yeah.
I brought cookies right before nap time. I'm sure the nannies really love me.
Mm-hmm.
They did say, are you coming tomorrow?
I'm like,
I'm not going to come tomorrow. I'm going to come Monday.
They seem to sleep through the cookies.
Go every day. All your kids got cookies today.
That's right.
But I don't know. I think these videos help us feel less alone.
Yep, should be a good week. I hope it's productive. Got some things in the works this week, and hopefully we can move right along.
Yeah.
Get a court date.
Day 62.
I need a court date.
Yeah. And then their holding pattern really
Did you ever watch that night court show back in the day?
Yeah.
Bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum.
Is that how it went?
I think so.
don't think
My
that's
favorite
it.
character was Bull, the big bald guy. He was the
Okay. What was the judge's name?
something Harry, Judge Harry. I can't remember his last name.
Night Court. You used to be able to go in Nashville and watch Night Court.
Wow.
Yeah,
Could
my
you bring
parents, my aunt and
popcorn?
uncle. No, I don't think they let. But you had to be quiet. But you could go in Night Court and just watch.
Bring some popcorn.
We went. Actually, you could still do it occasionally on certain days. When I was like 22, 23, because we went one night, and then I was like, we're gonna get in trouble because you could go sit and watch.
Yeah.
And it's just sad. I mean, I remember thinking this isn't funny, it's sad. But it's cheaper than paying for a movie because it's free. I'm sure that's what whoever I was dating at the time was probably thinking.
That would be funny. Hey, I got a
I'm
first
surprised
date.
you didn't go.
I got a first date idea. Let's go.
No,
I gotta
definitely
tell you,
not
listen,
a first date idea.
I was reading today that there's a guy from La Follette,
Not Lafayette?
not Lafayette, Tennessee. He is a
What, just as a timeout, Jeremy's from La Follette, Tennessee.
He-
And one of my relatives, the first time that they met him, and they didn't even have dementia or anything. They looked at him and said to him, "Are you sure you're not meaning to say Lafayette? They're two different cities." And he was like, "No, I'm from La Follette."
I'll spell it for you. Anyway,
Yeah.
there's a guy there that won Jeopardy.
Sorry about that.
Won
Thanks for hanging
Jeopardy.
in there.
Won Jeopardy.
La Follette?
Yes.
No way, they're
I
that
think he's
smart
even
there.
won it 2 or 3 times, and they're airing it. Yeah.
Country Mouse.
Get her done,
That's a lot
son.
of information. He must not be doing math.
Are you talking about me?
No.
I'm a great math person.
Meth,
Oh, math. He said math. Well, that's different.
as in crystal.
He's probably not started that yet.
That's just a really rampant thing in Jeremy's hometown is there's meth, or you move away, or you must own a farm or something.
Yeah, it's pretty, a lot of rural communities.
Sad.
Yeah. But
But hey, bright shining star.
just say no to meth. That's our public service announcement.
Can you imagine if you're on meth and trying to do Jeopardy at the same time?
Well, you'd be energetic. Wrong answer.
You get angry.
But yeah, that's pretty cool.
Meth sucks.
But congratulations to that guy. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I know him, but anyway, it's
Where'd
pretty
you read that? Fox News, Facebook?
Oh, it wasn't on Fox News. It was Facebook, I think. The rare chance that I'm on the fakey book
You're on there.
sometimes.
He's been commenting on I'm like, sign your name. I don't want to talk
I
about
do.
it.
She doesn't like my grammar, so I gotta make sure people know that it's me.
I mean, when your grammar changes the main idea of the sentence,
I like to jump around.
like for instance,
I gotta
I mean,
keep people
Jeremy
on
will
their toes.
text me, and I'm like, "Are you high? Like, what are you trying to say?"
I
I'm like,
wish.
"I don't understand." And he's like the other day, he's texting me. He left. I'm like, "Who's he?" And then I had to read back. I had to scroll up like 7 text messages and then try to go into Jeremy's mind.
That's right.
And trying to figure out what in the world he's talking about. He's like wandering around Liberia into government offices alone with like our driver Ahmed, who's our backup driver when Nelson's not available. And Ahmed, like, I feel like in a crisis, Ahmed would surprise us.
I feel like he's
But,
got
like-
maybe some kung fu skills or something.
Yeah, like I feel like he's one of those like sleeper, like
Everybody was kung fu.
he could do it. But like I don't think he's gonna let anything bad happen to Jeremy. But
Nah,
he's not Hassan. Now Hassan could definitely.
Messing
Hassan
people up.
goes to the gym early in the morning and then drives Sam around, I think. But Hassan was, he's there. But like, he's wandering around like, I'm like, is this your code word that I need to come find you? Like, this doesn't make any sense.
You know my code word is pineapple.
Is it?
Yeah, pineapple.
Nobody's gonna watch this end. Sorry, guys.
Way too
Sorry,
long.
Anna. Anna tries to listen to our videos, and she gets way
Thank you,
behind.
Anna.
We have a creeper on the stairs too. You get to go deal with.
Should we go? It got funny at the end.
I'm gonna read Psalm again.
Don't worry, I'll help you make it funny.
Psalm 112, 5 through 10. Good comes to those who lend money generously. That's more me than Jeremy, by the way. and conduct their business
Is
fairly.
there something about casting judgment or something?
No, I'm just saying you're getting better about just lend money freely. Give it away. Such people will not be overcome by evil. Those who are righteous will be long remembered. They do not fear bad news. They confidently trust the Lord to care for them. They are confident and fearless and can face their foes triumphantly. They share freely, give generously to those in need. Their good deeds will be remembered forever. They will have influence and honor. The wicked will see this and be infuriated. They will grind their teeth in anger. They will slink away, their hopes thwarted. Thwarted.
Thwarted, that's a good word.
I know. I'm super excited to thwart the angry and evil intents that are standing between us and our family being in the same house.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.